Hello, sixth graders. It's Mrs. Parsons here again with another math video. And today our math video is going to cover long division. Here at West Platte, sixth graders are now working with decimals, and we're making our way into decimal division, which means we're going to do division using decimals. These are going to be problems that include and involve decimals within their division. And so when we're thinking about that, sixth graders, I really wanted us to make sure we had a good grasp of what long division really is. What is it, or what do we mean by it when we say we want to do division to a number or something within our problem? When we're dividing, what are we really doing? So I wanted to start off with a video just giving you that kind of information. What is it to really use division, and what are we trying to accomplish once we do that? So we're going to be talking about long division. It's going to lead us into decimals, but I thought first today it'd be a good idea for me just to go back and revisit and maybe revise your thinking on what is it that we do when we actually divide numbers in a problem. So I want you to remember that first, when we're thinking about long division or even division with decimals, we are trying, ladies and gentlemen, we are trying to create groups. We have a number and we're going to divide it by something, and we're trying to create that larger item, that larger number, into smaller groups of things. And so that's really what long division or division in general is. It's taking numbers or taking items and putting them into smaller groups. So I put a problem up here, and I'd like to do it for you today. And my problem states 66,240 divided by 32. And sixth graders, by the time you're at this age, we should be doing 3- and 4-digit division problems in mathematics. And in this case, we really should be able to do a 5-digit by a 3-digit. And that's the problem I have for you today. So the first things I always want to tell you is know how to read the problem. This says 66,240 divided by 32. So you want to make sure you read it correctly, sixth graders. This states that this is the item I want to divide. That's the item I want to divide. And I want to divide it by this item right here. This item is called your dividend. That is what you're dividing into. I'm going to go into this dividend and see how many groups of 32 will actually go into that. This is called your divisor. It is what you're dividing by. So when you read this, sixth graders, and you start to do the division problem, you want to make sure you place the numbers in the correct spot or correct position in order to do the division. So this tells me that I'm going to take 66,240 and I want to divide it by 32, because that symbol right there says divide by. So that means I'm taking this dividend and I'm dividing it by this divisor. So make sure you first write division problems correctly based on the words you hear. And we all know Mrs. P is always stressing, math is a language. Math is a language. Read it, read it, read it. So I've now read this. This is my dividend. That is what I'm dividing. And I'm going to divide it by 32. And I wanted to just quickly go back over a long division problem with you, because it really does apply to decimals as we make our way through the week. So I'm first going to think about what mathematics am I going to use in order to use this division problem, or in order to do this division problem. And I'll let you know, sixth graders, the reason division is the last math operation you learn in elementary is because it requires you to do all the other operations in order to solve it. So even though technically we think about division, and we go, oh, we got to divide, and it's so hard to divide things, you're really using your other math operations to help you do that. And so I'm going to work through this problem, and then hopefully it'll give you a little more insight into division And then when we add decimals to it this week, hopefully that'll even give you a greater insight. So when I'm looking at this, sixth graders, I want to ask myself, I have 32 out here, and I want to know how many 32s I can get out of 66,240. Now I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to know that like that off the top of your head. Some people might, but most people don't. So what we like to do is we like to break it up in place value. Now some teachers will teach you partial quotients, and they'll say, how many 32s can you get out of 66,240? That's not really Mrs. P's thing. But if you contact me or if you want me to do a video on partial quotients, I absolutely will. But right now, I think we should be teaching sixth graders how to do a standard algorithm. And I do have I will call it a little trick. It's not really a trick. It's a number sense process that might help you when you're trying to do the standard algorithm if you don't like the standard algorithm right now. So this little trick or tip might help you. When I look at this number, sixth graders, and it's 32, and I know I'm trying to deal with 66,240, you're always looking at each individual place value. So I'm thinking, how many 32s can I get out of, and that place value is in the 10,000 spot. That 6 is in the 10,000 spot. And so I'm still not certain how many 32s I can get out of a 10,000 spot. So what I like to look at is I then go on to each place that I can eventually take that number into. So I know I cannot take 32 into this 6, but I wonder if I can take the 32 into 66. And that's where we start with the place values. So that tells me that I know I'm going to get 32 out of 66,240 at least a couple thousand times. I may not get it into the 10,000 spot, but I know I probably can get 32 out of 66,240 a couple thousand times, because I know 32 will go into 66. And here's Mrs. P's little tip or trick. I tell students to look at this 32 like it is 30. This is called compatible numbers. Compatible numbers. And so you look at the number you have, compatible numbers. You look at the number you have and you think of a number that you like better that relates to 32. Well, when I look at 32, I know it's a nice even number, but it's still kind of hard to work with. I really like working with zeros. So I'm going to pretend in my head that that really says 30. And then I'm going to look over here, and then that helps me because I know 30 will definitely go into 66, and I know 30 will go into 66 2 times because 30 plus 30 is 60. So I start and I say that 32, because now I'm going to look back at my number. It was originally 32. I pretended that it was 30 to help me out, and it said it would go in there 2 times. And then I go back and I look at my actual number of 32. And this is where the process of divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, and repeat comes from. You probably learned that from your 4th grade teacher because that's who originally taught you long division. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to scroll this down. And I know, 6th graders, that I can then say that 30 would go into 66 twice. Now I'm going to go back to my original divisor, which was 32, and I'm going to multiply that. And I'm going to say 2 times 2 is 4, and 2 times 3 is 6. So 32 will go into 66 2 times, and 32 times 2 is 64. So I first divided it. I divided 32 into 66. I'm now going to multiply that, and I got 64. I'm going to subtract that, and I'm going to get left a 2. I'm going to subtract it. I'm then going to bring down my 2. And I'm going to realize then, 6th graders, that 32 will not go into 22. And if 32 will not go into 22, that means there's no 100 spot for the 32. 32 isn't going to go in what's left more than 100 times. So I put a 0 up there. I tell myself that 32 times 0 is 0. I subtract it. I then put my 22 down. I bring my next place value down, which is 4. I look at this again, 6th graders. Oops, a little too far. I'll try to write smaller. I look at this again and I ask myself, can I use a compatible number? Because 32 into 224 is kind of difficult. So I'm going to go back and say it's 30. And then I ask myself what I know about my number sense, my number system. Is there any number times 3 that'll get me close to this number up here that's 22? 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 4 is 12, 3 times 5 is 15, 3 times 6 is 18, 3 times 7 is 21. Oh, wait a minute. 21 is pretty close to 22. So if I took 30 times 7, I know 3 times 7 is 21, but this is in the tens place, so I'm going to add that 0. So that would be 210. But my number is 32. So now I'm going to really use it and see if I can multiply 32 by 7 and still be less than 224. So 7 times 2 is 14. Carry my 1. 7 times 3 is 21. Plus 1 is 22. I subtract that, 6th graders, and I get 0. Well, I cannot stop. You cannot stop in division, 6th graders, unless I brought everything down. So I said 32 would go into 224 7 times. It left me with a 0, but I cannot stop until I bring down that last place value. And then I ask myself, will 32 go into 0? Of course, 32 will not go into 0. 0 minus 0 is 0. And I now have my answer of how many times 32, the divisor, will go into the dividend of 66,240. It will go in there 2,070 times. And that's the first process of long division that we really need to think about. How does a whole number go into another whole number, and how are we going to apply that information to decimals? And that is what I'm going to work with you on Wednesday and Thursday with, because this will be Tuesday when you're watching this video. So I'll work on that Wednesday. Or no, you'll be watching this on Wednesday, November the 18th. So I'm going to work with this Wednesday. Then on Thursday, I'm going to add in what happens when we get a decimal. And then eventually I'm going to do decimal by decimal. But this, 6th graders, is your first process into long division. And you need to always think about dividing, multiplying, subtracting, bringing down, and repeating as your process. Divide the divisor into your dividend, multiply it, subtract it, bring it down, and keep repeating that until you've hit every place value. So what this is saying, 6th grader, is that 32 will not go into 66,240 more than 2,000 times. So I'm not going to have anything above this 6. My numbers and place value don't start until my thousandths area, okay, or my thousandths number. And that's just a little back step into how we look at division. It is going to help us, 6th graders, when we think about division with decimals, because really all we're going to do is when we divide decimals, we're going to just put a decimal somewhere in our dividend. And since there's no decimal out here, I just want to find out how many 32s can I get out of $662.40. And that means I'm just going to move my decimal up in this problem. And there is another way to do this when we think about decimals divided by decimals. So this was just an opening review of long division. We really got to keep that in our head. And so that's all for today. And you do have an assignment talking about division and how you do long division and the process of that using whole numbers. I'd like you to give that a try. And then the next day, which probably should be Thursday, I'll have a new video for you about creating decimals in division. And then we'll move on to decimals divided by decimal division. Until the next time, 6th graders, please reach out if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a great day.